Hi, I'm Cynthia Hunt. I'm the program specialist here at the Amarillo Public Library. Today we are going to be introducing basic crochet stitches. This is specifically for beginners, but we'll also be talking a little bit about the difference between UK stitches and US stitches. They're the same stitches, they just have different names in whether you're speaking English, or American English. So let's get started. So today I'm going to be using a medium weight yarn, and that's a number 4, as you can see on the label, and it will also have a recommendation of the size crochet hook you use. It'll have the recommended size knitting needles. This is not an absolute. If you're a loose crocheter, your gauge will depend on whether you go up or down in sizes in your crochet hook, and the same thing with the number of rows. So we'll talk about that another time. For now, I'll be using an I-sized hook. It's an I/9 hook, which is a US terminology, and we're going to start off with a slip knot. Okay, so here is how you do a slip stitch. You're going to do it the same way that you do with knitting. Both craft styles always start with a slip stitch. And what you're going to do is you're going to have your end of your yarn in your left hand, the skein yarn, the one that is attached to the skein you're going to be using, in your right hand. Make a loop with the skein yarn atop the yarn end in your left, and then bring it under. Then pick up that piece and let it tighten, and there is your slip knot. And what you're going to do then is insert your crochet hook and gently bring it down so that the yarn is snugly against your hook. And that is a slip knot. Okay, so that's how you do a slip knot. Now we're going to go into how to do a foundation chain. And what you're going to do is, once you've got your slip knot, you're going to have that on your hook, and you're going to learn how to do a foundation chain. So the way you begin your chain, the slip knot portion does not count as one of the stitches in your chain, one of the links in your chain. We're going to do a yarn over, and that means moving that yarn around your hook, pointing the hook down so that it catches that piece of yarn, and pull it through. And that makes the first link in your chain. Do it again. That's 2. We're going to do 13. 3, 4. Notice every time, and if it falls off your hook, that's not a big deal. 5, 6. Oh, also, whenever you do get your stitch onto your barrel, make sure that you move up your hands on your foundation chain, because otherwise it starts to get a little elongated and it gets difficult to put your hook through the stitches. So keep inching up towards the base of that previous link in the chain. And you can see this first one is not a link. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you can see how they have kind of little teardrop shapes. It's almost like a braid. But there's a reason for that, and that helps you learn to count your stitches. 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Okay, now you know how to do a chain. So we've just chained actually 13 chain links in your foundation chain. Later on, whenever you come to turning your work, you'll sometimes need to do additional stitches. Then those are just called chains, but it's the exact same process, just pulling a loop through a loop, and each time you do it, that's one of the links in your chain. Next, we're going to go on to the slip stitch, which in British is called single crochet. Okay, now what you're going to do for your slip stitch is you're going to count down. Remember how we were counting our stitches earlier? The one on the barrel of your hook does not count as a stitch. So you're going to go to the second V that gets made, and you can see there's a V, and you're going to put it through the back stitch only and do a yarn over and bring it through and bring it through the other stitch that was on your barrel. That is a slip stitch, or in Great Britain and in Australia, it would be called a single crochet. Now we're going to do it all the way down, and then we're going to turn, and I'll show you how to do the turn. So you bring it through the back stitch, and if you were doing this on anything but the foundation stitch, you would actually do it through both of these under pieces. But because that leaves just a little bitty bump at the bottom, it makes it really hard to do. So it's a lot easier on this first row to put it through just the back half of that V. Bring it through, and then bring it through the other stitch. Do it again, yarn over, bring it through, and bring it through. When you get to the point where there's more on your knitted, your crocheted piece, it becomes easier to do this, and you can just do this in one stitch, in one movement, instead of doing it, separating it out like I am right now. But this is what the British call a single crochet, but Americans, I gotta go around the other way, call a slip stitch. And this is what you'll use when you're closing around in crochet, like if you're doing a granny square or the very beginning of a hat. You will go on ahead and use this to connect the last stitch in the round to the first stitch in the round. So bring it over, and that's called a yarn over. In British, it's called a yarn over hook. I guess they have to get really precise, but we just call it a yarn over here on this side of the pond, as they say. So bring it in, yarn over, grab that yarn and bring it through to the side that's closer to you, and then bring it through the only other stitch on the barrel. Now make sure that you don't wind up tightening down your yarn too close to your hook. It needs to be on the barrel so that you have a uniform size of the loops that you're using. So go through this one. As you get down and there's not very much left to your end that you're working on, it gets harder and harder to do because you don't have much to grab onto. But be patient with yourself and it will work eventually. Through and through, and this one, and through, and through. And now you see you have a whole bunch of new little V's, and you're going to turn your work. But before you do, you're going to need to make a one stitch chain, because you're going to go into the second V on your way back, and that is how you do a single crochet in British, or slip stitch, which is not the same thing as a slip knot in American crochet. Okay, so that was a slip stitch, or in British terms a single crochet. It is usually the same stitch you will use if you're doing working in the round and you're coming back to your beginning, and they'll say to close that round, you'll go through the first stitch that you did using a slip stitch or single crochet if it's British, and that will end your round. And ending this part of the slip stitch will go on to the double crochet in British, which is also the single crochet in US terms. Okay, so you'll see that by doing that back stitch only, the back half of that V only on that first row, that this second row kind of lies flat against the surface. It's not on the top edge. So I'm going to correct that on this one, and we're going to start doing the single crochet for Americans, which is the double crochet for the British. Gosh, they make it confusing. So what we're going to do is go to the second V, and we're going to go through both halves of that V. And then we're going to bring it through. Then we're going to yarn over again and bring it through both of those. And that is the American version of the single crochet, which is the British term for the double crochet. And to me, it looks more like a double crochet because you go through once under both of the sides of that stitch. And some people will have you go through the back side of the stitch every time in some books. So it's really up to you. I kind of like to go through both because I think it makes it stronger and it lays flatter, and you don't wind up with all these little V's on the outside of your work. So here we are, we're going to go through both sides of the V, yarn over, bring that stitch in, again always turning the end of the hook towards the bottom of the V, which makes it easier in theory. Bring that through. So now you have two things on your barrel. Then you're going to yarn over again and bring it through again. And here we go again. And when we go to the next row, you'll see how much easier it is to go through these because they're both on the top of the stitch instead of along the side like they are with this right now. So you bring it through, and at first you're going to have to kind of worry it in, and then after that, once you get more used to it and there's more to hold on to, you won't. So we're going to go back through. There's not very much to hold on to right here at the end. Okay, so now I'm going to chain stitch 1. And now you can see how there's kind of a little dimple in between each of the stitches. The stitches are now lying atop the work, and you can just bump in and it grabs it really easily. See how much easier that was? You can just go through and go through again. And then pop it in. See, look how little time it took to do those same stitches that it took me forever to do on the other. So there you have a whole row. So now you know how to single crochet in English, which is the double crochet in the British terminology. And you always have to keep those straight. Next, what we're going to do is a half treble crochet in the British. They say treble instead of triple, which is another indicator when you're reading a pattern, whether you're reading a British pattern or an American English pattern. So the next one will be a half treble in British or half double in American English. Let's try that. Okay, so we finished 2 rows of single crochet, and now we're going to start the half double in American English, half treble in the British terminology stitch. Each time you'll notice that the single crochet is the American single crochet, which we just did 2 rows of, is taller and has a little bit of a hole in between the stitches, whereas the slip stitch or single crochet in British didn't have that. So each time you go to a larger stitch, you're going to have a taller row. So to offset that, you need to chain some stitches at the end of your row before you turn. For the single crochet, you stitch 1 link or 1 stitch in your chain. For the half double or half treble, you stitch 2 stitches. And to compensate for that, you're going to go to the 3rd stitch whenever you go in. But unlike the slip stitch and the single crochet, you're going to yarn over before you put it into that 3rd stitch. So you can see 1, 2, 3 stitches. Pop it in, yarn over again, pop it out, and then you yarn over a 3rd time, which is why it's a half treble, but you go through all 3 stitches. And that is a half treble, which is why, because it has 3 here, or a half double because you yarn over before and after stitch. And then because you don't do a 2nd yarn over before you end the stitch, you just do 1 long pull. So you yarn over, go under your stitch, yarn over, come out. You have 3 things on the little shaft of your crochet hook. Then you yarn over again and go through all 3 stitches at once. Yarn over, go in, yarn over, come out, yarn over and go through all 3. So yarn over in, yarn over out, and in one sweep go through all 3 stitches. And you can tell that these are making more of a rectangular looking, more of a slot instead of a little tiny hole or dimple. It's making it bigger, and that'll make it easier for you to find your stuff. Now the chain that you did counts as your first stitch. Those little 2 stitches, that will count as your first half double or half treble crochet. So yarn over, in, yarn over, come back out, and yarn over, go through all 3 stitches. And we're going to do this all the way to the end, and then we'll move on to the next stitch. So this is yarn over, in, yarn over, out, yarn over all 3, yarn over, in, yarn over, out, yarn over, and pull through all 3 stitches. What I really could love to go is to the double treble, so we'll do that last because it's fun. All 3 stitches, yarn over, in, yarn over, come back out, and yarn over all 3, yarn over, in, yarn over, out, and yarn over all 3 stitches. If it'll let me. It's being a little difficult on that middle one. It's always the middle one. I was a middle child. We're always trouble. Okay. So, yarn over, in, yarn over, out, and yarn over all 3 stitches. Okay, and that's it for the half double. And as I said, you can tell that where there was just a tiny little dimple before, there's now a larger dimple because each row is getting successively taller. And that's how you do a half double or half treble stitch. So that's how you do a half treble crochet in British or half double crochet in American English. Now we're going to go on to the treble in British or the double crochet stitch in American English. Okay, so now we're going to prepare to do a row of American double crochet, which is the British treble crochet stitches. So we're going to chain 3 lengths, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to start with the 4th link in the chain, and that's 1. We don't count the one on the barrel, so 1, 2, 3, 4, which will put us right back down at the end. So what we're going to do is yarn over, go in to our stitch, yarn over, come out, which just feels like a half double or half treble. Then instead of going through all 3, we're going to yarn over and go through just the first 2. Then yarn over again and go through the second 2. And see how much taller that makes the stitch? But that is an American double, a British treble stitch. So we'll yarn over, go back inside the next stitch, come back out. Then we're going to yarn over, go through the first 2 loops on the barrel, yarn over, go through the second 2 loops on the barrel. Yarn over in, yarn over out, yarn over the first 2, yarn over the second 2. And if you're following along with me on this, you're going to wind up at the end with a little sampler so that you can see how each row looks a little bit different. So yarn over in, yarn over out, yarn over the first 2, yarn over and go through the second 2. Yarn over in, and I'm going to go on ahead and do this all the way down this row. So you can sit with me and do it too, or you can just watch me as I get faster and faster. And now you've done a row of double crochet or treble crochet if you're British. And the first little chain that you did of 3 counts as your first double or treble crochet stitch. And that's what you will do. If you're going to do another row of double or treble crochet, you'll do another chain of 3, and that will count as your first stitch on your next row. But we're going to move on to the American treble crochet, which is the British double treble crochet. So let's go on to that. Okay, so now we're going to wind up with the double treble in British terminology, which is also the triple or treble crochet stitch in American English. Okay, so now our next row for our next stitch on today's program, we are going to do a treble or triple crochet in American English, which is called a double treble in British crochet terminology. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a chain just like we always do, because it's going to be even taller. We're going to do 4 stitches in our chain. 3, 4. See how tall these are getting? And then we're going to turn our work and count down 1, 2, 3, 4. And the first one we're going to go to is the 5th stitch right here at the base, because that's actually the end of the prior row. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a double yarn over, which is why I think they call it a double treble in the British, which I kind of like. So we're going to wind it around twice, not just once, but twice. And then we're going to go into that 4th stitch and come back out. Now we've got 4 things on there. So we're going to yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, and go through 2. And this is a double treble stitch. And you can see how much taller it is than the double crochet or British treble stitch. It's like half again taller because it went through a 3rd yarn over on the other side. So we go twice around, bring it back in, yarn over, come back out of the work. That's where you're attaching your stitch to the rest of your work. Then yarn over again, go through the first 2 loops, yarn over again, go through 2 more loops, yarn over again, and go through 3. And see how tall that is. And you used to see like these vests that, and you still see them sometimes, little old ladies wear them, which now that I'm becoming a little old lady, I guess I'm going to have to make one for myself or get it at a thrift shop. But you'd see these really tall rows of stuff, and that's because they were using treble or double treble or triple treble, and they would do these. But this is kind of fun doing the double yarn over 1, 2, then into the next stitch, yarn over, come out, yarn over, come through 2, yarn over, come through 2 more, and yarn over, come through the last 2. And you wind up with another stitch. Yarn over, come out, yarn over 2, yarn over 2. You can tell as I'm going faster as there's more to hold on to in this work. But the looser it gets with these double trebles, they're almost, it's like trying to knit or crochet spaghetti. So it gets a little bit different. So it gets, you have to really hold at the base a little more. Yarn over 2, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. To me, the British terms make a little bit more sense because you're doing, it's called a double treble, I think it's because you do the double yarn over, and then once you come back out you do 3 sets of going through 2 loops. But this is just called the treble in American English. But I think the British sometimes are a little bit more descriptive. But it's kind of fun to do because you just woo woo through that double yarn over, and then it's like, oh, I just keep doing 2s. So dive into that thing. Yarn over, come out, yarn over, do 2, yarn over, do 2, yarn over, do 2. You can tell how tall this last row is compared to the last one. It's really tall. Number 2, yarn over 2, and yarn over 2. Okay. Did I do 2? Yeah. Over. Come through 2. Yarn over, come through 2. Yarn over, come through 2, which brings us to the top of that stitch, and you can tell what a long, how much height there is on this row. Over and come through 2. And there you are. You have completed a line of double treble if you're British, so double treble, or treble triple if you're American. And that is the last stitch we're learning today. So next I'm going to show you how to close off your work and finish what you're doing so that it doesn't unravel, because otherwise it will just unravel if something grabs a hold of this remainder of your yarn. Okay, so you've now learned how to do the slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, and treble or triple crochet in English, which is also the single crochet, double crochet, half treble, treble, and double treble in British English. Now I'm going to show you how to bind off your work so all that work doesn't get unraveled when you put it down. So, next, we are going to close off our work. You now have, if you've been doing this along with me, you now have a little sampler. You see how that slip stitch or British single crochet, which is this very bottom, is very tight and compact. Then you have 2 rows of single crochet, a row of half double, which had the bigger little square things in it, then a row of double and a row of treble or double treble crochet. This way you can go back and refer to these if you're looking at a pattern. If a pattern doesn't say if it's using English or US terminology, you can look at a photo in it and kind of see which stitch they're using. So you want to keep this as a little sample of your work. And what you're going to do next is you're going to close off your work by making this last loop a little bit bigger and give yourself a few inches and snip it off with some scissors. And then you're going to bring it through that last loop and tighten it. And then you can either get a yarn needle and work it through some of these stitches, which I can do. But right now, I can yank on this and it's not going to come undone. So you have put a stop on what you're doing. And you can go on ahead and put a yarn needle on your yarn. And then you can, and some of them have a little flat end on the needle so that you can go through really small areas. But this way I can do this. I'm just going to go down the side, so which will kind of stiffen the side and also make it a little straighter. So I'm going to go on through those. I'm going to hold my top piece so that it doesn't get squished down when I pull through the end. And I can go all the way down the end if I want to, which I may as well do. And then, just to be extra safe that it doesn't come back, you can go over a little piece of yarn. You can either change direction completely, and you can come back up a little ways, because it will have a hard time doing both of those. So I'm going to go back up stitches. And now I can snip it off. And it's not going anywhere. And now you have a little sampler of slip stitch or British single stitch, double stitch, half double, double, and treble or triple stitch. So now you know how to finish off your crochet works, and this finishes off today's lesson. For the Amarillo Public Library and our Maker Space, I'm Cynthia Hunt. Bye-bye.